Hello there. Welcome to a new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boyce. I am Boyce, and this is my podcast. You are listening to I am your podcasting host, and Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, established and emerging, all different genres. And on this extra special show, and I will explain why shortly, I am talking to the Bright Smoke, the duo. It is the return of the Bright Smoke. They are OG TMT guests from 2015 in November, episode number 54. I interviewed them initially after their album Terrible Towns that came out. They are back with a wonderful new album forthcoming on July 5th. It is called Gross National Happiness. The Bright Smoke are Mia Wilson and Quincy Ledbetter. Not only are they talented people, they are also genuinely nice. We talk about the making of Gross National Happiness and how they got to the new sound and the complicated journey involved. And if you want the Bright Smoke backstory, I suggest that you listen to episode 54. Of course, I will put the link in the show notes for you. And why is this episode extra special? As I teased, 2 interviews. You will not only get the interview with the Bright Smoke, I am interviewing Quincy Ledbetter solo, a man of many talents. In addition to the Bright Smoke music that he makes, he's also a solo artist. He has a new album out himself. It is called 5 Improvisations, featuring his solo piano performances. He is also a filmmaker, and he does all the Bright Smoke videos. He recently won a contest called Project Create. We talk about that, and it will allow him to make his feature-length debut movie. After the Bright Smoke interview and the Quincy Ledbetter interview, you're going to hear 2 songs, The Bright Smokes Again, and Q.Ledbetter. That's how he goes when he does solo music. 3 Nights Adrift. That's the format. And just to set it up for the interview with Quincy, we were doing a sound check, started talking about Buddhism, and it was like a cool topic to talk about, so I am including that in the conversation. Here it is, without further ado, my interviews with the Bright Smoke. Enjoy. As I'm listening to the new album, when's it coming out? July 5th. Okay, right around the corner. Mm-hmm. And it feels, you can correct me, more muscular, more aggressive in some ways. Yeah. Was that intentional, organic? Like, how did you get to that from Terrible Towns?
Yeah.
Because it's been 4 years, so I mean, if it was different, that would make sense.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind if I go, can I go?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So we had actually written the album in 2016. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff, like the material, came about in about 2016. And went on tour, and then I came back and was like, we have to redo the album.
Okay. Yeah. Why was that?
I don't know. I was just, the songs, I got in a stage test them and kind of got out there and realized that, like, nah, they needed to be bigger, they needed to be different. They felt like they just, it just needed to be different. But it was like done.
Okay.
The album was like done. And I was like, hey, Quince, we have to redo everything.
Spent a lot of time recording the album and the other iteration. But I was excited to do it differently. Not because I didn't like how it was coming out. It was coming out great. But it was very similar to, in my opinion, it was very similar to what Terrible Towns was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, this is great. We're just doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. But then when she was like, we have to do it over, I was like, yo, let's get like gritty with it. I was really excited to do it. I had, during that time, I was really, I wouldn't say into, because I wasn't like going on a deep dive, but I had become very like excited about like the way bands did it in like the 90s, where like they made their own album covers and it was like gritty and sloppy and dirty, and I was excited to like try that. Okay. You know, because I had never tried that before. Mm-hmm.
So was the problem like lyrically or the sound also?
So lyrically, I think that was the thing. Lyrically, it was a lot more aggressive. Mm-hmm. It's a political album. Yeah. So just like topically, it wasn't what it was. And then the sound was this sort of very like crystalline, kind of like Quincy had said, like it was more in line with what we had been doing, and so that is what didn't match. Okay. So this idea, like he was saying, sort of like grungy '90s aesthetic, this kind of DIY-ness to it, that made sense. Yeah. And that's kind of what we were hearing when I came back.
Okay. And how long had you worked on that version?
The first version?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like a year and a half.
Long time.
So is that regular? Like you guys are meeting together, or like okay?
No, we were like recording an album. We were like doing the thing. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then you just knew it didn't feel. You know, it didn't feel right because when you were playing them live,
it just it changed.
Okay.
Yeah, it changed.
And the country changed too.
Yeah.
And you know, we don't like the way things are going.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah. And I'm angry. I don't want to put words in me.
I'm always angry.
Yeah, Mia was angry, and the album was like la la la. It wasn't weak, but it was also very like, you know, airy. Mm-hmm. It didn't sound like how we felt.
Okay,
so
once you decide to scrap that, like what do you do now? Like how are you starting over lyrically?
Yeah, so I started over. Well, so one of the things lyrically that changed is that there's this. I started doing this kind of like, I don't know what it is, like it's like talk singing. Mm-hmm. I've never done that before, and so I was like super self-conscious. So coming into the studio being like, I just never really like done any of that vocalization. Yeah. So like, and I had never really like screamed into a microphone. I'm just like only in like my bathroom while taking a shower when no one can hear you and your mouth is closed. So like to be able to actually like make a lot of noise, like physically, was really, it took like a lot. I feel like it took a lot of coaxing of Quincy being like, you just make more noise. Just do it. Yeah.
And how long did that process take with the new stuff?
About a year and a half, too. In all total, this has been a few years coming.
Yeah. Okay. And then what were those songs about? About the political climate?
Yeah, I mean, it started, I think the thing that's a little upsetting is that it started in 2016, and I think a lot of it was, it's not satirical in the way that it's like light, but it was kind of like, I feel like I was writing this as though, but it's going to be fine. You know, it's like, it's kind of...
Everything's going to work out.
How bad can it be?
Right. And so then when, like, I had this idea that these songs aren't going to make sense in a couple years. In a couple years, it's going to be like just this nuisance that we were complaining about or whatever. And so then for it to be even more salient, or the fact that the things that I'm singing about or the things that I was writing about weren't actually about what's happening right now, because I was really hoping that wouldn't be happening right now, but they're still relevant, and that's kind of like, oh, fuck, you know? So that was a thing.
Yeah. What is your process for writing?
So for this, it was the same. I will hear music. I have to kind of go sequester, write the music, write the lyrics, come up with the song, record it, bring it to Quincy. Okay. And be like, what do we do with this? Usually the first is we speed it up. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. You like it slow?
It's a 7-minute song and it's just a chorus. Yeah. What do we do?
Yeah. And then when she comes here, I listen to the demo. I usually always love it. I speed it up. Mm-hmm. Okay. And since it's usually just Mia with a guitar in her like living room, I don't know where you do it.
My bedroom.
Yeah, in her bedroom.
Okay.
Vocals in my bathroom.
Yeah. I try to like imagine the song, and this is how I kind of approach like production. I just try to imagine like what the feeling of the song is and how can I service that. Okay. You know, what instruments should I add to this? How fast should it be? Mm-hmm. How messy should it sound? How clean should it sound? Yeah. So with this album, it was a lot of like, how can we mess this up? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like my favorite song of the album is Again, Again. Mm-hmm. And I was really going for like RZA circa 1993, kind of like boom, 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 boom. You just like my first time hearing 36 Chambers. Yeah. That like how gritty it sounded and how messy and how like it was all about the energy. Like I feel like a lot of this album is that. Okay. That's why, yeah.
So what makes it a Bright Smoke album? Just the two of you together? Because you're not really in the same room until what, vocals or
until production and vocals. I think the honesty, the rawness of it, like the lyrics have always been raw, you know. And I know raw is like a cliche, like yo, we're on the raw shit, son, you know. But like the honesty has always been there, and the rawness, and like the kind of like fearlessness in like talking about things that, you know, a stuffy label exec might be like, well, the kids don't want to hear that, you know? it's kind of like force feeding. I don't want to say force feeding, but it's kind of like, yo, this is the narrative that, you know, I don't want to put words in me's mouth, but this is like what we're feeling, and you're going to listen to it. Mm-hmm. By gum, you're going to listen.
Okay.
To it, yeah.
Well, that was also like, there just wasn't anything else to write about. So I guess so much of the material prior to this had been it's kind of navel-gazy. Mm-hmm. It's all very like fraud and heartsick and all that stuff, which is fine because that's still like very much my speed. Uh-huh. But this was the only thing that seemed relevant. Like I couldn't write about anything else. But what makes it a Bright Smoke album, I think, with us is that the methods with which we like kind of come up with sounds is still very much what we did with Terrible Towns, mm-hmm. and like trying to just really, really stretch everything. And a lot of it actually, I feel like with the two of us, will come with describing the sounds and describing the tones that we want in somewhat non-musical terms. So I remember for this, and I think it was really frustrating for Quincy, but I kept coming in and being like, so you know when you have like a debilitating panic attack? Yeah. I want that. I want everyone to listen to this and sound like they like need to call home. And I guess, and we just kind of built it from there.
Yeah, and that easily translates to you, Quincy?
No, not at all. It was, Mia has adjectives for things that I'm like, what does that mean? Like, she's like, I'm hearing something really, industrial is my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm hearing something really industrial and really like tinny and kind of like, I'm like, huh? You know, like, you want drums or not, yo? You know? But with this, it was more about like, I feel like with Terrible Towns, it was more about pushing the sounds and the instruments that we're using, mm-hmm. whereas like this time it was more about pushing the vocals. Okay. You know, like how can we really like stretch these vocals, or like maybe we muddy things up so that it's not 100% clear what we're saying. Maybe I approach harmony in a different way. I definitely approach harmony in a different way with this album, because like I'd usually go for like the soulful thing, mm-hmm. and Mia is constantly pushing back on because my leanings are like, you know, what an old man soul would do. You know?
Still at it.
Still here. I'm gonna get him in there. But it was about like, you know, layering really strange sounding vocals on top of like strange sounding vocals. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people just have to listen to like figure it out. Yeah. And also like creating an audible panic attack, mm-hmm. was something I had never done before. Yeah. You know, like scratching nails on a chalkboard, like, let's go for that. I'm like, mm-hmm. no, that's not, you know, yeah. But it worked out for the better, you know. Okay. It pushed me to a place I had never gone before. Mm-hmm.
So are these songs for you, Mia, a way of dealing with what's going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I think that I did for the first time was to try to create a narrator that wasn't me. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of this sort of like diaristic kind of a assumption with songwriters, where it's like, oh, you must be, well, with female songwriters, I mean, while we're here. Let's just be here. That if I'm saying something, it must be taken out of my 7th grade diary. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I just like didn't really feel comfortable with, and whether that's assumed or not, like there's not much I can do about that right now once the music is out. But the narrator in a lot of this stuff is not me, and it's not someone who's particularly likable, and it's not someone who's particularly sympathetic. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it's like a very antagonistic narrator, and I think that is something that I've never done before. Yeah. And having to kind of stand up on stage or to kind of sing these things that I like that are very like sort of diametrically opposed to what I think or who I am, and so to be able to just kind of be in that and sit in that kind of person that you hate. Yeah. Was new. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose to use that POV? There was something about singing about these characters and these viewpoints and these sort of political entities that to comment on them seemed so far removed. Like, and it seemed sort of like adding to the noise. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, of course that's bad, or yes, of course that person is deplorable or disdainful or whatever. But there seemed to be something that was a lot more powerful in being that person. The problem is that I think if you don't create adequate distance, then you just create like an antagonistic narrative. So there was a struggle in making sure that there was like adequate distance in it so that it becomes commentary and it doesn't just add to the sort of cacophony of like hate. But yeah.
And do Quincy, like you're right here, I can ask you, do you touch her lyrics in any way, or is that just all your...
Never.
Okay.
Whatever she wants to say is what gets said, you know.
So how did you set up from the beginning?
I might play with vocal arrangement.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do that. I play with vocal arrangement a lot, but as far as like, say this instead, I never do that.
Okay. How did you set up the dynamics of the group from the beginning?
I don't remember.
It wasn't purposeful. Like, there wasn't, like, boundary setting. I think that's one of the things that... Right?
Yeah.
Why it works?
Yeah. I know... Mia originally came to me as, like, hey, I need someone to produce my album. And then it became, but, like, hey, I want to do this stuff live. I'm like, I'll do it with you. And then... by the time we got to the second album, it was like we're doing it together.
Yeah.
But as far as the dynamic, it's just I know how I like to work. I don't, and if it's something that's coming from inside of me, I don't like people telling me like, "Well, you're feeling this wrong."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know you think you feel that, but like, what if you felt the way I want you to feel?
Yeah.
Like, so
would be cool.
Be cool. I'm very careful about like not doing that to people. So whatever she comes with, hey, this is what I want to do. I'm like, all right,
okay.
Here's how I can help you do that.
Okay.
You know.
And talk about the video, which you directed, Quincy. The concept and all that, and what made you choose Model Citizen as the first single?
We were on the
video. We were on the
fence, actually.
Yeah, it was between Model Citizen and Mauritania.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, whichever song we chose, we were going to use the same footage.
Okay.
And we purposely decided to not come up with a concept until, like, was it the night before?
It was the day of. I showed up and was like, what am I doing today?
Yeah.
You're like, you're jumping off a roof.
Yeah. I thought about, it was that morning. I woke up early that morning. I was like, okay, here's what we're doing. And we purposely decided we're not going to like plan anything. We're going to just like spontaneously like come up with something.
Because we had a failed video.
Yeah. We tried to shoot a video that we planned.
Yeah.
And we got space. We paid this dude to come through and we shot it, and it was just trash.
Oh, really? Okay.
Garbage.
The way it looked, or
both. I didn't bring my A game.
Okay.
But also, like, what was disappointing about it was like we had this. I still think it was a good idea, but it's just like when we saw it, it didn't like look how I wanted it to look or feel how I wanted it to feel. And I was like, yo, we put in all this work for this whack ass video. Yeah. And so we decided, what if we don't put in all this work? And because, you know, for some of the stuff I do like video montages, like art pieces, like mood pieces. And sometimes the best stuff is when you just like go out and do it.
Yeah.
So we decided to try that, and it came out better.
Yeah.
I thought about and the concept came from like how hard it is to be not only an artist, but how hard it is to be a human being and like living in today's political and social climate and like wanting to give up, and you can't, you know what I mean? Yeah. So like something always pulls you back in, and sometimes you have to do something like crazy to like recenter yourself. Yeah. So that's essentially what the video is. Okay. You know, Mia's trying to jump off of a roof. Yeah. We shot it at the roof of this building. Went up there for a couple hours, maybe not even a couple hours, and I was just like, stand over there, run over here, kneel down, laugh, cry, and then do this again. Okay, what I'm doing is this. And then, and then we went to her place to shoot the interior scenes. And Mia had the idea, like the image of her like going into a bathtub fully dressed was like from her. And I was like, all right, that's how we're going to end this. And here's how we're going to get there. And then we just did it. It took like total like 4 hours maybe.
Yeah.
And how long was it to edit?
It pretty fast.
Okay.
I'm a fast edit.
Yeah.
So it was pretty quick. As far as like edit time, it was like 3 hours to edit, but over a couple days.
Yeah. So what made Model Citizen, what gave it the edge?
When I looked at the footage, Model Citizen just fit better. Just the energy behind it matched the energy of like the concept and all that stuff. So it just like felt better. And we were leaning Model Citizen, but I was like, I don't know, Mauritania though, you know? And then when I started editing, I was like, no, you're right.
I love I Am Lion. That's like one of my favorite. I Am Lion. Yeah, what is it called? I Am...
The Lion End.
The Lion End.
The Lion End, okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's one of my favorites on
that
there.
One might be offensive. Yeah. I'm still waiting. We'll see.
Well, everyone's offended. So,
we're all snowflakes these days.
So what's the album comes out? Are you guys going out on tour? Like, what are you looking to do?
We're kind of playing it by ear, so I think, we want to play the album live. I know that Quincy's got a lot of projects going on, so we have there's a lot of different ways it could look on stage, which is going to be an interesting direction. And I gotta be honest, so I don't know. I feel like there was this thing that's like millennial hustle. Like, 4 years ago, I was like, yeah, let's the next thing. And now I'm like, I need 8 hours of sleep. It's like that kind of like anything is fine. Yeah. I feel like you kind of, that starts to slow. And so now I feel like it's more like, no, what's the best thing? Like, where's the best place for it to live? What's the best outlet? Like, what's the best way to kind of get the word out? And so there's definitely a lot more
intention.
There's a lot more intention. And just like, you know what? I'm not in a huge hurry.
Yeah.
Let's see what we do with it.
And I see this a lot in film, especially. Sometimes in music, but a lot in film. Like, sometimes people hustle so hard that they end up hustling backwards. You know what I mean? Like, they're just going. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing, what are you doing this for? He's like, I gotta get it. Like, get what? And like, I forgot. It was Danger Mouse. This is when we were listening to Danger Mouse before we started recording. But like, I saw an interview with Danger Mouse during his like Gnarls Barkley days, and he said the hardest question. And I've heard this among other successful people too. He said the hardest question for people to answer is, "What do you want?" It sounds easy. He was like, "Oh, I want," and then you can't answer the question. And knowing what you want is like one of the hardest questions that you can ask yourself and answer for yourself. Like, yo, what do you want? Like, he was saying it from a perspective of like people wanting him to hook them up with stuff. He's like, what do you want me to hook you up with? And they wouldn't have an answer, And it was like, yo, put me on. Put you on to what? So I've always been like, I mean, the way I make and release music is very different from how we do as a band. And it's many people will think it's counterproductive.
Which people?
You, my wife, family, but it's exactly what I want.
Yeah,
I want
to. You're talking about the solos.
Yeah, the solo stuff I do. I want to make it. I want to put it out, and I have this grandiose idea that it's going to be like people are going to trip over it one day. Yeah, and it's going to be like, oh my god, I found a museum with all this art. But whatever. But know what you want. Do it with intention, because that's what's going to get you where you're going or where you need to be, and that's more important than hustling backwards.
He's not bullshitting on that either. You've asked me that point blank a number of times.
What do you want?
So what do you two want?
I mean, I've never given Quincy a straight answer, so I don't think today is not going to be the day.
I'll wait.
Yeah. No. It's a podcast.
Dinner.
It's a podcast. We have all the time in the world. What do you want, Quincy?
For my life, I want to be able to like have autonomy. You know what I mean? Do what I want to do when I want to do it, and then create a space for other people to do the same. So because I didn't have that when I was coming up, and this goes for like film, music, anything creative. Like, I've always, for a long time, years, when I first started doing music, I was doing it for people. you know, and I made the kind of, you know, it's back when I was just making beats, you know, and I was just making beats because people were like, yo, that's what you do. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's what I do, you know, but then I became a filmmaker and a photographer and an artist, and I was like, oh, I want to do this other stuff. People were like, no, you can't. I'm like, hey, I was like John Locke and Law. So like, you don't tell me what I can and can't do, you know? And I just want to be able to live off of my creativity, off of my films, off of my music. I don't want anyone telling me what to do and when to do it and how to do it, especially with music. It's different with film because film is a team sport, but you can't do it without others. And film is better with others always. But sometimes music is different, you know? You can do it by yourself. And there's something really liberating about like having silence, making something, and then something's there. And you did it, you know? Yeah. And then you get to put it out, and like the 10 people that hear it, you know, love it. And I'm like, yeah, cool. What's I got coming up next? You know? That, I don't know. That's really cool. And I want to be able to like do that forever. And give people the opportunity to do the same.
Beautiful, man. Yeah. Is there anything I missed you want to add? This is wonderful, as usual.
No.
Mia?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk to Quincy.
Word.
Solo Quincy. Get that? How I said that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bryce Smoke.
All right, thanks.
Word.
Nichiren Buddhism? Nam-myoho Renge Kyo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Buddhism is really interesting, man. Yeah. Some of the concepts for my films are like, so people tell me that, oh, that's like very Buddhist. Yeah. And I'm like, is it? You know? It's some crazy shit I thought
of. But not intentional.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentional. I guess it's just in the air.
I'm writing my third feature right now, and one of the main characters has the ability to carry people over to nirvana. So like if you're on your the idea of currently for the current draft is like if you're on your deathbed, this girl can like bring your spirit over to nirvana. Okay. And somebody told me like, I just knew what nirvana was. Yeah. I didn't know anything about like what was behind it. And someone said, I was like, oh, that's very Buddhist. Because I told them more about the movie. They're like, are you Buddhist? I was like, nah. Huh?
You might want to investigate.
Yeah. I'm already on that wavelength.
Yeah. So let's see which direction. There's so many interesting directions. I'm like so excited. Okay, let's go back to an interview with Mia. As the Bright Smoke. You talked about you were making beats, right?
Yeah.
How old were you making beats?
Huh?
When was that? How old were you when you were making beats?
I started when I was 17. I was in high school, and I was put in this like art class for artistically gifted students. And there's this guy that said,
humble brag.
Yeah. I was the worst in the class.
Okay.
But I was in class with this guy named Derek Jackson, who became one of my closest friends. And he noticed that everything that I was drawing, everything I was painting had to do with music. Yeah. And I didn't realize that, but he was like, yo, are you a musician? And I didn't have a lot of self-esteem back then. I still don't. But like I back then it was really, really bad. And I was like, yeah, I play instruments. He was like, what do you play? Yeah. I was like, I play alto sax, tenor sax, bari sax, bass guitar, piano, organ. And I'm listening to all these instruments because I thought that everyone could play multiple instruments. And I was like, if I can do it, surely everyone else can do it better. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And he invited me, long story short, he invited me. 2 weeks later, I'm in a basement studio, and this is back in 97. So, like, it was like analog, Fostech, 4-track recorder, and they were making music. Yeah. And I didn't know that you could do that. And I was hooked. I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
What were you making the beats on?
I at the time, I just had a bass guitar.
Oh, okay.
And, like, they had a keyboard, so I was playing that. And they had a drum machine, some Russian drum machine that my boy Kevin had in his basement. And I was just there playing bass guitar on a track that Derek was making. And I low-key asked Kevin, I was like, yo, can you teach me how how to use this stuff?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. And he showed me right then and there, and I put on the headphones and I made my first beat. You know,
how did that feel?
Amazing. It was unreal. And I thought, I'm just like clunking around on this thing. And then I took the headphones off and we played it over the speakers. And there was a whole bunch of like rappers in the basement or whatever. And they were like, yo, that's fire. That's dope. And I was like, is it? I'm good at something?
Yeah,
and they were like, yo, this is fire. And they like rapped over the track immediately. And I was hooked.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you were like not thinking, you weren't feeling about the fact that you played all those instruments.
I thought everyone could do it. I thought everyone could do it.
There was nothing special about it.
Nothing special.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think there was anything. I don't want this to be a drag, but I didn't think there was anything special about me.
Okay.
So like anything that I could do, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That you would think that. Yeah.
So
that would be the extension of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so the beats. So how did you would you start practicing all the time? Did you get a drum machine yourself? Or?
Not yet. Not at that point. I was just going over. I was hanging out with those guys. I was making music with those guys. So after school, I'd hop in Derek's car. We go to Kevin's house and we just make tracks. And then I graduated. I was older than everybody else, so I graduated first. They were all a year. Most of them were a year behind me. So I went to college, and I had a summer job at a place called Deck America. I could do a whole podcast about Deck America, but I made a lot of money there.
Yeah.
And I used that to buy my first keyboard, and you could sequence on it. So I was making my beats on my keyboard, saving them on floppy disks. And Derek went to college the year after, and he went to Elon, and Elon has recording studios on campus because it's a super fancy school. So my junior year, I had my car on campus, and I would drive down in North Carolina to Elon, spend the weekend with Derek just making music. Yeah. And then when I graduated college, I ended up working in a recording studio. That fell through, but working at the recording studio, I got all this gear while I was working there. I became all about owning my own gear so that I can make music anytime I wanted. And that's how I handle it. Yeah. I record all my albums back there in my bedroom, back in this room, and
So when did you become or how long was it after you became the go-to beat guy?
That happened over time. That happened over time. So in college, I would be making, I got that summer job and I bought that keyboard in the summer before my sophomore year.
So where was this at?
Virginia State University. Okay. And it's HSBCU. A lot of black folks. Everyone raps.
Okay.
Everyone raps.
So it's not a stereotype?
Yeah. It's everyone was a rapper, yo. I just call it
literally.
Yeah. You sing or you rap. And there's so I would hook up my keyboard. It was like a 88 key sequencer, and I would hook it up to my stereo. I had a CD player, and I had a wire that I could hook it up to my speakers, and I would just make beats, and people would hear the metronome, beep 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 beep, and it's super loud. You could hear it down the hall, and the rappers on the floor who had been in a recording studio knew what that sound was. So they would just knock on my door, yo, you making beats in here, son? And I was good at it, that's one thing. I was really good at making beats. I got a reputation on campus. It's the dude who made beats for everyone. And I was a rapper too. Okay, and
I didn't know that.
I was also really good at that in my heyday. My wife's laughing at me. I was making beats and rapping. There were a lot of really talented people on campus, but I was one of the best people on campus. And that got the attention of this guy who's still a really good friend of mine today. His name is, I'm not going to say his government name, I don't know if you want it, but he went by Bobby Fisher. Okay. And we all call him Fisher or Fish. Yeah. And Fish was older than everybody. He had an apartment off campus. Ooh. And Fisher would set up these really, really cool meetups at his apartment where all the rappers and beat makers that were on Virginia State's campus, some people just around Petersburg, Virginia, would come through his crib and just like play tracks.
Yeah.
So you'd like burn a CD, bring your CD over to Fisher's place, and just like we play your beats, people would freestyle over it. It was a vibe. It was a really cool vibe. And Fish and I hit it off, and he was like a really big motivator, like helping me. He's an A&R at Empire Records now. And I met Trey Songz there.
Oh, really?
Like I got like when Trey was like just coming up, like no one knew who Trey Songz was. I had tracks on Trey. Like Trey was doing these really awesome mixtapes because he's from Petersburg. And Trey would be at Fisher's place, play him some tracks. He'd take the tracks, come back with the finished song, you know? So that's how I built my name and like kind of got my footing in making music was through Fisher and through those meetups and just like getting used to play my tracks for people. Yeah. And then when I came home, the same guys that I was making music with were still doing it, but like not as much, you know? And I do it, you know? Yeah. So I got a job at a recording studio called Titanium Productions in Woodbridge, Virginia. And I became their in-house producer. I was a teacher for a year, but then I left that and I was working full time in their studio, making tracks for clients. I was their in-house producer. So any artists that came through that needed tracks, I made them and I produced them and I recorded them. I ran their sessions. It's kind of like how I do for myself and for Bright Smoke. I was doing that for everyone in Northern Virginia. Okay. And like if you needed dope tracks, you came to us. You came to Titanium Productions because that's where Q was. Yeah. You know? And built a name for myself, and then I left Virginia.
So before we get to you leaving, what do you think it is about? Like people came to you for what? Like what was were you going by what, Q.Ledbetter, or what was your rap
name? At the time,
like, what was your sound?
My sound was, I was heavily influenced by Timbaland and Pharrell, and so I had like, and I played everything. I didn't sample. So like I played everything. So there were no samples to clear. Yeah. So the placements that I got, like we would take trips up here to New York, and I got a track on Petey Pablo's second album. There was a rapper named Graf back then that I worked with. Illa G, who was down with Mobb Deep. Like they loved me because they didn't have to clear any samples. Yeah. And I was able to make like really fat sounding beats. And I played everything. And part of it was just the show of watching me make it. You know what I mean? People would come through the studio and hang out, and I'd just be like, you know, doing it. And my beats had that knock. When I listen to this stuff now, I still have some of my old tracks. I'm like, this is garbage. This is trash. But like, and I'm not a club dude. I hated club tracks, but like I was always being told I need a club banger. Okay. And I'm like, yeah, that's
something for the ladies.
Yeah. It's something for the ladies. Club banger, something to get people moving. And I hated that stuff. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's just dumb. I can make that for you right now. But here you go. You know? And it kind of got to a point where I didn't like the music I was making, but it was like good by commercial standards. You know, and that's part of the reason why I left, because I got a reputation for being somebody that I didn't want to be, and I had to like refine myself or whatever.
Does that sort of mess with you too? Because it's like you're making music for others. Yeah, it's your well, in some way your vision, but it's going to be for other people.
Yeah, it was all in that, and it's different now because there's more openness to like innovation. But back in the early 2000s. You know, it was a weird concept where like there was the single and the album track, and the album tracks were deliberately not as good as the single. Yeah, and that was always backwards to me, you know. And when people come to you and they tell you, "Hey, you have such great talent. Let me tell you how to do it. You need to be doing this." So many people were saying to me, people that were like in my circle. That I was working with were like, yo, you need to make club bangers. You need to make more gangster shit. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, but I hate going to the club. I'm not a gangster. Yeah. You know what I mean? And even like as an artist, like I was still rapping back then. And the stuff I was talking about was like, it wasn't elevated. It wasn't like on some other, I was on some other next level stuff. It was just, I realized I was pretending to be something that I wasn't, you know, and I wasn't getting the gratification of expression that drew me to music in the first place. You know, I have this thing about like there being silence and making something out of that silence. And now you've created a thing. And I didn't feel like I was doing that. And actually Fisher, who I mentioned before, he gave me a rude awakening one day. He was like, yo, Lil Wayne's looking for tracks. I was like, I don't like Lil Wayne. Yeah. You know? He was like, he laid it out for me. It's like, look, you're going down a path to be this. If you don't want to be this, then you need to not chase it. Yeah. You know, what do you want? And I thought for a couple of years about like, yo, what do I want? And when I figured it out, I left Virginia and moved up to New York.
Was that hard leaving Virginia?
It was hard, but leaving Virginia was hard from a logistical standpoint. But when I made the decision to leave,
you were ready.
I was gone. I was gone 6 months after I decided. I was working for the Department of Justice. And I remember exactly where I was standing. I was waiting for the elevator to take me down to my lunch break. And I was like, I have to leave here. I have to leave. And I grew up in the DC area. Woodbridge is right outside of DC. And I've always said that Woodbridge and DC in general, you know, it's true that no building in DC can be built beyond a certain height. It's like the Washington Monument or something like that. No building can be built higher than that. And I'm not dissing my hometown, but I feel the same way about the art culture down there and the music scene. Like,
there's a ceiling.
There's a ceiling. You can be that dude or that woman or that person in DC super easily. As long as you just grind it out, you make connections and you're like good at what you do. You know, people are like, yo, I get in the clubs for free. I'm like, is that all you want? Yeah. You know what I mean? You know, like you're in line at Dream and you get VIP. Like that's what people were like going for. But I wanted more. Yeah. And I wasn't going to get it there. Yeah. I was doing like poetry open mics and like kind of like trying to find myself as an artist. And I realized I can only go so far here.
Yeah. I felt that way about Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. You know, you get to a point where like you're that dude. You're the one. And you don't want to be because if you're the only one kind of like going for a certain thing, not that you're going for something better than everybody else, and it doesn't mean you're better than everybody else, but if you're the only one in your circle that's going for this up here, and everyone else in your circle is like going for like not that. Yeah, you have to get around people that are going for what you're going for. Yeah, because they're going to push you, and it feels so much better to be around people who are going for more than what I'm going for. Because it's like you see it that it's possible. Yeah, yeah, and then you're pushed because when you're around those kinds of people, and again, they're not better people, but when you're around those kinds of people, the world opens up. Yeah. You know?
Because what's it saying? If you are the most successful person in your group, you need a larger group.
Yeah, exactly. And success means different things to different people. So like some people, like my boy Derek, who I mentioned before, didn't want to be all that. Yeah. What he was doing at his level was fine. And that's what's up. Yeah. You know, to him, he's like, yo, I'm killing it. Yeah. You know, but I'm like, yeah, I want more.
Was that scary to anybody in your circle that you wanted more?
Not really, because they didn't really care. Okay. You know, people in my circle didn't really care. I think the people at the production company I was working at, they like, because I was the person drawing the people there. Okay. If you were to ask me, they might tell a different narrative. They were coming there for your boy. But like they weren't very pleased with me, like parting ways with them. And there were some people who didn't want to leave Woodbridge that told me, I remember one friend of mine was like, you'll be back in 2 years. Yeah. And I was like, I was like, ouch, you know? But everyone else was happy doing what they're doing. And that's like, goes back to what I said before. That's their success. They were successful. They were killing it, you know? And they're like, oh, wow, you're going to the big city? Wow, good luck, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was either a kind of nonchalance that you're leaving. I was like, all right, bye, you know? Good luck, you know? Or like people who thought that I wouldn't be able to hack it, you know?
Yeah. So when you moved to New York, what was the plan? Did you have
I didn't really have a plan. Just like get around people who were better than me.
Okay.
And who I would never be as good as. That was the objective. And day one, I hit that.
Yeah.
I was a lot of my closest friend is a stand-up comic. So I know I would go to his shows all the time. I was living the life of a stand-up comic, but that's a whole different story. So most of my friends were stand-up comics who had moved up here. And they're like kings of their game. Like they were on it. And the stand-up comic grind is the hardest grind. It is the hardest grind. And that's where I got my grind from, my parents, but also like going to stand-up shows and seeing like the dedication they put into it and the amount of times that they fail. Like seeing these people who I thought were like comedy gods get on stage and fail was a very valuable lesson, because it's not always you take constant L's doing this. Doing music, film, acting, anything that I do, it's all you sign up for the failure. And I learned that from my friends who are up here.
But it's the ones who get back up after that failure.
Exactly. People say that, you know, there's very little chance that you'll make it. You know, no one ever makes it. I've never seen anyone who has not given up on themselves not make it.
Yes.
You know? It's 100% the people who don't quit are the people who get there. And it's the people who quit who are like, oh, most people don't make it. You know what I mean?
Even because I'm seeing this now where I currently work, there's people, they don't even get started because there's this fear that it's not going to work or they're not good enough. And I'm like, okay, even if you feel like you're not good enough, you can still do the work.
You can still do it.
You can't wait to feel like, you know, top of the mountain, perfect person, and then I can do this. Like, no, you got to do the work, and then like hopefully that other stuff will prove over time or not. But and
it always does. Like that's especially true with film and writing. Like I forgot where I heard this or if I thought of it or whatever, but like my first time writing a screenplay, I said to myself, okay, at this very moment in time, I am literally the worst screenwriter in the world. You know what I mean? Because this is my first time doing it. So like I'm the worst at it. And once you like accept that and you think about like how much better you can be, then one day you'll look up and you'll be like, yo, I'm actually kind of good at this, you know?
Because it's endless how better you can be.
Right.
As long as you keep doing it.
YouTube will teach you everything. Google will teach you everything, you know? I learned how to make music, how to write, direct, shoot, edit films on YouTube and Google.
Really? Okay.
All of it. I never went to film school. I was in band in high school, but like all the instruments I know how to play, like I went to band, I played saxophone, but all the other instruments I learned how to play, I learned on YouTube. You know, guitar, I learned by watching videos of guitar players and stuff like that. You know,
you said some of your grind that came from your parents and doing that. What did they teach you? Is that by example, watching them? Like, oh, they do it, or them pushing you?
My parents were teachers. So they were like cracking the whip academically, like all about like hard work and read. If you want to know something, you read it. The information is out there. You just got to find it. But as far as like mindset, like my mom is a workaholic. Like I have vivid memories of her just like working. You know, both of my parents were educators, and my mom was just always working on lesson plans. And when she got a raise, she constantly moved up. And I would hear her come home and talk about like the racism that she faced. And because her and my father would have those conversations almost like nightly, almost every night. Like, oh, they said this to me today, and they helped each other through that. But she always got up the next morning and went and like persevered. So I saw that. And my dad, he was always the person to tell me like, yo, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he also like hammered it in my head. Mine, my brothers and my sisters, like, if you want something done, you have to do it. You know, you want to make music? Like, you rap? Nah, why not? You know what I mean? You play instruments? Nah, why not?
Yeah.
You know, if he told me, he was the first person that taught me, like, if you know how to do everything, then you don't have to wait on anybody and you don't have to ask for anybody's permission.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm all about like not waiting on people, because most people, and you know this, like most people just don't do it. You know, 99.9% of the people who say they want to do something just don't.
Yeah.
You know? And if you're out here in the world and you're trying to like collaborate with people, it's hard because 99.9% of them aren't about it. Yeah. They're not about that life. So that's why it was important for me to build my own studio. That's why for my solo records, it's me alone in a room getting that shit done. And it's hard and it's lonely. Yeah. I want to work with other people. And that's the downside of it. Like, I'm so used to working on my own that sometimes working with other people is hard, because it's a combination of like, I move too fast. Yeah. Or like, it's hard for me. It's not hard for me to collaborate, but it's hard for me to like not already have it all done. You know, by the time they get here, it's already done. Yeah. You know, so it's like,
they're like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. That gets hard. And that's, you know, but it's a way I have to grow, but it works because I'm all about making stuff and putting it out.
Yeah. I love that. So how did the filmmaking come
that happened because, and it's interesting because I realized I've wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 12, but I didn't realize that's what I wanted to be because there were no black filmmakers. And so I didn't have an example of like, oh, I can do this too. Yeah. You know? So I saw, people laugh at me when I say this, Last Action Hero, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in the theater. And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. I want to do this. And it was the first time that, because the character in the film, Danny, I think his name is. I was picture Arnold Schwarzenegger screaming, Danny. I think the movie's about a kid who goes into a movie, you know? Yeah. And he realizes that, oh, this is all fake, you know, nothing is real. And it creates like a contrast between the movie world and the real world. Yeah. And it's the first time I realized, I was like, oh, making movies is a job that people have. Like, people make movies, you know, they're not just come from on high, you know? And I was like, that'd be cool to make a movie, you know? And that's when I started watching movies a lot. My dad took me and my brother to a lot of movies. My dad was always watching movies. I was always watching movies. And it wasn't until when I moved up here in 2007 that I started hanging out with comics. Yeah. And a lot of comics write screenplays. They write shorts and they write sketches. And I started doing that. Okay. So I was never a stand-up, but I was, you know, a comedy actor. I would do like, my friends and I would do like this variety show every quarter or whatever, and I would write on that and stuff. And when I moved up here, it was the first time that I was around filmmakers, because, you know, everyone in New York is a freaking filmmaker. Yeah. And I was like, oh, maybe I could do this too, you know? And I was already a photographer, and the DSLR revolution started. So like these really good photography cameras can shoot really good cinematic looking footage. So I just started doing that. Yeah. And then, dude, it was like that moment in the basement, my first time making a track. It was like that times 10. Yeah. Like, yo, I can make movies, you know? And I saw on YouTube a video of Spike Lee, because I wrote best advice for like people who want to be filmmakers. And there's a video, you could look it up today. It was like Spike Lee's advice for filmmakers. He said, write. Yeah. You know, if you want to be a director, you need to be a writer. So I was like, okay, Spike. And then I started writing that day. I started writing some, you know? And now I do it all. Yeah. You know? So you've done... Is this going okay? Am I ready?
Oh, this is wonderful.
All right. I'm sorry.
I'm just fascinated.
feel like I'm talking.
See, for me, for you, the filmmaking, like the interviewing, is for me. Like the first time I did an interview, I was like, oh yeah.
What were what led to your first interview?
The first interview, I knew I wanted to do a podcast. Well, okay, actually going back, I took classes at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Public Access. Okay. So I was going to do like a talk show for that. Yeah. And then I'm like you were saying, like you need a staff or whatever, people to do a show on.
And when was this?
This was 4 years ago. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, 4.5 years ago. Word. So I was like, okay, but you have to have a staff. I'm like, but a podcast, I can do that on my own. I don't have to wait for people, and that suits my personality. Yeah. So I never did the public access because things start taking off with that. Yeah. But once I started doing the first interview with somebody I knew from Pittsburgh and Vaughn DiCarlo. Yeah. And she's like does stand up and music and all this. Cool. So I went out to Jersey to interview her, and I knock on the door, and she doesn't answer. And a part of me is like, oh, thank God, I don't have to do this because I was so nervous about it. Totally. I was like, I'm fine with rescheduling. Yeah. So I'm like, well, let me just text her. So I text her, and then she didn't hear me knocking. So she comes down, and I had all my notes out, and I used to have a cheat sheet to set up the equipment. So she says I have my notes out, and I asked the first question, and then an hour later, I realized I'd never looked down at the notes. Wow. And I'm awesome, and it was just this hour interview felt like 5 minutes. I'm like, yes, I am home. This is it. That's so I understand what you talk about. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a spark. Yeah. You know? And to be able to do it and not have to wait on other people and their level of, what's the word? To be excited to do a project, to that drive. Yeah, you can just rely on yourself for that. Yeah. Yeah. It's making something out of nothing is I don't know, for me, that's much to the chagrin of some of my collaborators, and my wife, who's like, you could be pushing this, you could be marketing this. I just want to put it out, but it's really exciting to there's nothing, and then you made something. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, this, okay, I don't know what's going to happen when I walk into your place for an interview. Yeah. And then an hour later, it's wow, this great thing happened that I had no way of predicting. Yeah, it's exciting, right? Yeah. So, let's see. Do we want to jump to last year, BT? Oh, how do you get to that? So or explain what happened. So I have been writing and directing. As far as I took my dad's advice, as far as filmmaking, I do everything. Yeah. Not really a good film producer. I do it though. Yeah. But it's not my bag. But I write, direct, shoot, edit, color correction. Of course I do the score for my stuff. So I've been doing that for years. Since I moved up here. So from 2007 through 2018. So we're talking 11 years. And nothing's happening. I make some short films. I get into a couple of really small festivals where it's okay, thanks. Are you getting frustrated? How do you maintain your energy? I mean, it's a frustrating vocation. It's a frustrating thing. Making music is frustrating. Yeah. You're in front of that keyboard and nothing's coming out. You're like, I'm a fraud, Yeah. And then you write something and you shoot it and it doesn't come out like you want. And you're like, I'm a fraud. Most of it is that. Yeah. But you keep. What else are you going to do? You keep going. So I wrote one screenplay, and then Alieu the Dreamer is the film that I'm making this year, and I wrote that one next. So what happened was I wrote my first screenplay with the intention of doing it myself. Yeah. My wife is a producer. She produces most of my stuff, my best stuff. I finished the screenplay. The day I finished it, I was like, all right, I opened a spreadsheet. Yeah. And I was like, here's how we're going to do this. And within 10 minutes, I realized there's no way I can, I've written a movie that I can't do for a low budget, you know? So I was like, well, hell, I spent the past, and it took me 2 years to write my first screenplay. And I was like, this is a feature length. Yeah, feature. And I was like, wow, it took me 2 years to write this. I mean, I got to write something else, that I can actually do. So I put that one aside, and then I started writing Alieu the Dreamer. Yeah. And I have I have really vivid dreams and really vivid daydreams and ideas. So I keep a list of that stuff. Yeah. So I went to my list of ideas. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I found the kernel of the idea for Alieu the Dreamer. Yeah. It was based on a nightmare I had.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I started writing it. It took me like faster because I had, done it before at this point. So I was working for a digital media company that shall be unnamed. I quit in grand fashion, in grand form, like, and so in July of 2017, I had a month off because I quit and I didn't have any work lined up. So I was like, all right, I'm going to really like buckle down on this screenplay. So I knocked out the first draft. I had done the outline and stuff, but in the month of July, I knocked out the first draft. Yeah. And then I started rewriting because writing is rewriting.
Yes.
And so between July and December, I had rewritten the screenplay and it got to a pretty good place. I was happy with it. And in February or March of 2018, I saw this as I was looking for opportunities for like screenwriting competitions and stuff that paid out money. So like if you win this competition, they promise all this stuff like we'll get you in the industry, we'll get you a manager. I didn't care about that. I just wanted the money. So like if I win this, I get $10,000. If I win this, I get this. And
not just exposure.
Yeah. So in the swarm, because I was going to do it myself. Yeah. Like me and Yuki, my wife, were just going to make the film ourselves. And in the swarm of applying for all this stuff, I applied for so many things. Yeah. I applied for the BET Paramount thing. It was called Project Create. And I submitted for it because it was free. Yeah. Submitting was free. And they're like, we're going to produce your movie if you win this. I was like, yeah, cool. Sounds good. It's free. And I submitted and I forgot I submitted for it. Then, and also one thing that you do, this is a sidebar, when you submit to some of this stuff, they offer coverage. So, which is like feedback on your screenplay. So while I'm entering these things, I'm paying this money to enter, but I'm also getting feedback on the script. So every time I enter something, it's getting better. And the Project Create was one of the last ones that I entered. And a couple months later, I got an email saying like, oh, you're in the top 50 of this competition. And I was like, sounds great. Yeah. Because by that time, I had become a finalist in a couple of other competitions, like top 20, top 30, top 40 or whatever. And they hit me up like, you're in the top 50. I was like, cool. And they said they wanted me to send a bio video, introducing myself, talking about my film. And by this time I was working at another digital media company and I had access to their studio. So I knocked that out. My wife came and directed that for me and sent it to them. And then they were like, all right, we love you. You're in the top 10. And the top 10 people make a proof of concept. And they sent $2,500.
And what's that proof of concept?
It's like you shoot a scene from the movie. Or you shoot like something that's around your movie.
And that's the 3-minute clip that's on the website. BET's website.
Exactly. And the thing is, $2,500 isn't a lot to make anything. But for your boy, who had like been training, I had been training for like the past 11 years to do everything myself. It was like, with $2,500, you can't hire a crew. You can't hire an editor. You can't do that. But I do it all. So like and my wife produced it because she's a bomb producer. So she produced it. I wrote it, I directed it, I shot it, edited, I did the color, and BET gave us access to the Viacom like sound music library. I was like, no, I'll be scoring this myself. So I did all that stuff, and we had like and we auditioned actors, and I had a good friend of mine who was double timing as a PA and an AC, an assistant camera. And we had a friend of ours, like come do makeup. So we had a woman come and help with audio. So we had like a very small crew. But like, we came in way under budget because I was doing everything else. And so I submitted that, and it went up with all the others. And the way they did it was the judges would pick the top 4, but the 5th one would be chosen by audience, like the people who were watching all these proofs of concept. And I didn't win the 5th spot, but I got chosen by one of the judges. Okay. By the judges. And so I got into the top 5.
Nice.
In the top 5, they fly you out to LA to pitch to all these executives. Yeah. So it's like, you know, when in my dark days, I'm like, I just won a competition. I'm nothing. I'm a fraud, you know? Yeah. But like, they still put us through the steps that you would usually go. So like, we flew out to LA with the other top 5. That was a blast. I just love being around artists and filmmakers and musicians and stuff. So we spent the week out there. And then on the last day that we were there, was a Friday, we had to pitch to these execs. So we all pitched that day. We pitched solo. So like the others weren't in the room when we pitched to the executives. So one by one, we went in there, we pitched, and they told us that day who the winner was. Yeah. And it's one of the greatest moments of my life, actually. We were all lined up, and the executives were there, and one of them was Connie Orlando, who's like VP programming at BET, Brian Robbins, who's like president of Nickelodeon now, Robbie Reed, master, like, you know, casting agent, or all that, you know, casting director. So it was like top tier people. So they're in front of you. I did my pitch. I left. One other person went. We came back, and they had us all lined up. Yeah. And other people from BET and Paramount were in the room by this time. And I remember they gave everyone they gave everybody something, like an opportunity to like keep the conversation going about their films. And I remember the exact words. Connie Orlando said, you know, it's great. You're all great writers, but there can only be one winner. Yeah. And that is Quincy. Congratulations. Yeah. And I was like, word? You know, and like my exact reaction was like, word? You sure you didn't make a mistake? Then everyone was clapping. And boys, I turned around and I walked into the corner of the room. And I just like stood in the corner. I was like, what? You know? And it was a conference room where the walls were glass. So I'm in the corner, but I'm facing everyone in the office. And I'm just like, you know, I was in the corner for like it was only 5 seconds, but you know, it was a long 5 seconds. And I was like, oh no, I'm being weird, you know? And then I turned around, and Jamal Noisette, who's with BET, and he's been like ushering us through this process. So like, you know, we knew him. He walked over, gave me a hug, and I was like, yo, I did it. You know? And then I started crying, and then he started crying, and then Robbie Reed started crying. And then they whisked me away to do this interview. And by this time I had like stopped crying. Sorry, I'm rambling so much.
No, this is perfect.
By this time they were shooting like a reality kind of thing, which is ended up just being like a promo video. But the producer of that video was like asking me all these questions to get me emotional, but I had already done my crying. So I was like, yeah, you know, it feels great too. And I'm like a real chill person. Like, I'm not like I don't beat my chest. So when she was like, how do you feel? I was like, yo, I feel great. And that was it, you know? But then this, the guy who was working, he was a camera op, and he asked, like, before they let me go, he's like, Quincy, I have one question. He said, if the young version of you could see you right now, how would he feel? And waterworks. Because, like I said before, I had no confidence when I was little. I got bullied. I had no confidence. I didn't have a lot of friends. And I told him, I said, the young version of me wouldn't even recognize me. You know what I mean? I'd be a stranger to myself. And waterworks. And since then, it's just been slow but exciting process of like getting this film off the ground. And we're finally gonna be shooting it this summer.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful.
And
you know, a couple of things is how, you know, like that person, like how did you get to be the person that you could do this, could stand in that place, and the confidence to do that? Because it takes a confidence to be able to submit your stuff.
Not really. It just takes because I don't have as much confidence as I should have. But one thing I'm sure of.
But you still did the work.
So one thing I'm sure of is like, I love doing this, and I have to do what I love doing because what else am I going to do? Yeah. And when I always say to people, because people ask me that sometimes, and I always say to people, like, I mean, I don't have like a formula.
Yeah.
I'm either going to do it or I'm going to not. And not doing it has never been and will never be an option. So like on days when I don't feel like writing, I'm like, all right, Quince, you're either going to do something today that pushes you forward, or you're going to not.
Yeah.
Which is it going to be? And which one sounds better? Moving forward. So like, and this is what you love doing, so you do it.
Yeah.
And it's hard and it's grueling and it kicks you in the ass every day. And like you said, with your first interview, like you were nervous, she didn't answer the door, and you're like, good. But then she showed up.
Yeah, and I had to.
Yeah, you had to. Yeah. And now look, you're doing this podcast. You got another podcast. Yeah. You're good at it. You're killing it.
Thank you, you, man.
So, yeah.
So what is so now you're going to be shooting this summer?
Yeah, this summer.
And do they have like a deadline for you to have everything?
Man.
Okay. So what do you like? You
Film
do
industry.
it and then you turn it in.
We have a producer who's attached. I don't know if I could say yet, but like we have a producer who's attached. We're working with him. We're doing rewrites of the script. It's a process, man. It's one thing I can say is I am learning a lot about myself. I'm learning how to like collaborate with people. Like I said before, I'm like not used to collaborating with people, but it's something I've been yearning for. And I'm getting that now. I'm getting a crash course in like collaboration and like choosing your battles. When should you be like, we shouldn't do that? And when should you be like, all right, I'll do that, I guess. It's a crash course in that. And it's a crash course in patience. Because one thing that I'm not used to is waiting. Because like I said, I never had, me and Yuki and I have never had to wait for permission. If I have an idea, I write it and I go to her. I'm like, here's what I'm thinking. She's like, okay, cool. And then we go do it. Whereas this is like, we have to wait for like contracts and like, well, this person's out of town. We got to wait for them to get back in town, and they got to read your new draft, and then notes, and then we have to have a discussion about the notes. And it sounds like I'm annoyed by it when I say it. And part of it is like, I'm just not used to it. Yeah. I'm not annoyed by it. I'm just not used to it. And it's scary. I'm terrified because I'm terrified. Yeah. But I'm supposed to be. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to.
The other expression is, if your dreams aren't big enough, if you're not scared, your dreams aren't big enough.
Yeah. Word up. Boys, dropping gems on boys. What? Boys dropping gems on. But yeah, I'm equal parts. I'm terrified, but I'm equal parts excited too.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah, and I'm learning so much, and my life is changing, and it's helping my music too. Because a really good friend of mine who I cry to all the time when I'm like scared, and I'm she's a really good film producer. Her name is Michelle Cameron. She did a film called Nancy a couple years ago. You should check it out. It's amazing. But she always says, it takes pressure to make diamonds. And I suffer from like anxiety. Like I have like anxiety problems. And when things are going great, my brain starts looking for things to be anxious about. Like, things are good, but what about death? You could be dead. And I start worrying. So then I just focus on like in times where I've gone as far as I can go with the film. Like I'm waiting on the studio to come back to me with notes or like their thoughts on like an idea I had. I can go in my studio. I can make music. And that's where this is a segue. This is where my most recent album came from. Like the 5 Improvisations. That was at a pure, like, I have to do something or I'm going to go crazy, And a lot of my solo records come out for that reason. Like, I gotta do something, and then.
So for the solo record, 5 Improvisations, Do you go in with any kind of idea, like,
no,
or you just sit down and like, with that, let's see what happens?
With that, I wanted to challenge myself. I've been really, one of my favorite musicians, composers, artists is Ryuichi Sakamoto.
Yeah.
And there's such a freedom in his music. I like music. The music that that resonates with me the most is music that has that feels like the artist had total autonomy.
Yeah,
that's why I'm into the Beatles, because after Rubber Soul, their shit got crazy, and it's like no one was telling them no. You know, that's why I listen to Radiohead. As far as working bands, Radiohead is my favorite because they do. It sounds like they do whatever. You know, like they can do, In Rainbows. And then come with King of Limbs.
Yeah.
And everything is nuts. Yeah. It's so nuts that I was listening to it, was like, I've never heard anything like this before. Do I even like this? You know? And then after listening to it again and again and again, you listen to Pharrell and Codex, and it's there's complete freedom. Yeah. You know? Tom York's lyrics aren't something that he's not writing. He's writing. I don't know what his mentality is. I've never met him. I admire him so much. I hope I never meet him. Yeah. But the lyrics come from. It feels like it comes from a place of it comes from a very personal place, and it sounds to me when I listen to Radiohead and when I listen to Tom's solo music, it sounds like, yo, this is what I'm feeling, and this is how it feels. And this is how my feelings sound. Yeah. And take it or leave it. If you don't like it, bugger off. Yeah. You know? But if you're into it, cool. Yeah. We're in this together. And when I make music, I decided that's how I want to do it. And I get the same thing out of Ryuichi Sakamoto's music. I hear the focus and I hear the freedom and I hear the mood. I hear the feeling, you know? And I had watched. There's a documentary about him called Coda. And I watched that, and it showed you see him actually creating music, and that's always exciting for me. Seeing the people I admire make the stuff they make. And there was something about that was just freedom. He was recording rain and noise and putting that in his music, and I was I've never done that before. That's why when you listen to 5 Improvisations, I recorded it listeners can't see, but I have a back room where I do all my film editing and my music. And I opened the window and I have a Zoom recorder, an audio recorder. I just stuck it out the window and I let it run for 30 minutes or something like that. And that's how some of the songs start. You can hear faintly there are people yelling and playing in the background. There are sirens, and I was just I want the music to feel like how being in this room feels with the sunlight coming in this room right now. Or when I'm going for a run down Eastern Parkway, I want to write a song that feels like that. Yeah. So in one of the songs I had done years before, the 3 Nights Adrift, that it was an improvisation that I played. I had shot a music video that never came out. So I re-edited that as a silent film. And I edited the film and I had it playing in Pro Tools. And while I was watching, I was playing piano. And I just improvised based on what I was seeing. And I was that was fun. I'm going to try to do an album of that. And I'm going to try to do it in 2 weeks. Because I was in a place where I'd gone as far as I could go with the film, and I needed to make something. So I did that. You know, there was a piece that there was a chord a 2-chord progression that I had come up with 5 years ago. That I was all right, I'm going to start playing that, and then I'm just going to play. You know, and I did that, and I recorded that stuff from outside, and I brought that in, and I just threw. So I played the piano, and on top of that, I just threw stuff on top of it. And I always only did one take, and I didn't really write out what I was going to do. I just I figured out like 2 chords, and then I was like, all right, record, boom, and then I just started playing.
Yeah.
And then I built everything else on top of it.
Well, I think it's beautiful.
Thank you, man. That means a lot, man.
Yeah.
You're one of like 5 people that have heard it. Because I don't market it anyway.
Dude, so where can people keep up with like what's going to be happening with the movie?
I'm not on social media.
Okay. Well, I guess your Instagram would it be?
Instagram. Okay. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. The crazy thing about Instagram is I don't have it on my phone.
Okay.
I whenever I use Instagram, I download it.
Okay.
And then I use it for what I need, and then I delete it again. Okay. But like, I'm on it pretty often because I go on the computer. I'm the only person in the world that goes on Instagram on the computer. So on Instagram and on IG.
Okay. What is it? Q.Ledbetter? What's your Instagram?
It's just Q.Ledbetter.
Q.Ledbetter.
Or like and all my not all, but the solo albums that I have out are all available on my website, and they're on streaming platforms.
And your website
is Q.Ledbetter.com.
Okay, great.
Q.Ledbetter.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah.
Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
Okay. When I saw on your Instagram about the movie, I was like so proud.
Oh, thanks, man.
I love to see good things happen to past guests.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So
I'm proud of the stuff that you're doing, man.
Thank you, man.
You're doing 2 podcasts now. You're 100. How many episodes did you
182.
Just 182.
Yeah, dude.
And last time we talked, it was like episode 32.
54. That's how far back we are. Yeah, dude.
Bro, keep going, man.
Yeah. You're OG guest.
Hey.
Thank you, Quincy.
Thank you, man. It means a lot that you came through. Appreciate it.
Sure.
You
And that was Q.Ledbetter with 3 Nights Adrift and Again from The Bright Smoke. I hope you enjoyed the conversations. I hope you enjoyed the music. Make sure you visit thebrightsmoke.com and QLedbetter.com. I will put both links in the show notes. I will also include a link to Quincy's movie clip that is on the BET website, so you can check that out for yourself. I am online at talkmusictalk.com for more podcast information and to stream every single show. You can also follow me on Instagram at This Is Boyce, and you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. Just search for Talk Music Talk. Just leave, I'm asking a request, just leave a rating and or review wherever you happen to be listening, because it helps to expose the show to new listeners. There is also a Talk Music Talk app. You can get it wherever you like to get your apps for iPhones and Google Play. Search Talk Music Talk. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.